What is up, guys? It is Stu, and it is another episode of the What the Fuck Gym Talk podcast. This is a very special episode. I was gonna do this live on YouTube, but fuck it. I'm not. I got to figure out this live shit, and I don't want to fuck this, the recording up. But this is a special. This is 7:32 p.m. on December 7th. I've already had a beer, just kind of hanging out, doing some work, and I had some DMs go off on LinkedIn, emails sent to me with this particular article. This article is the Bloomberg article that was literally published, let's see, at 5 a.m. Eastern today, and updated at 2:18 p.m. Eastern today, December 7th, 2023. If you're not aware of this, I'm going to read the title to you, and I'm literally going to read this entire article, word for word, the entire one, and provide commentary throughout, because those of you guys in the fitness industry, if you want to be a better business owner, you have to become aware of what's going on in the fitness industry. You have to become a connoisseur of the industry. You have to know what's going on in the news. And there's people that have been in the industry, business like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years. And I mentioned brands like Exponential, like, what's that? I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. How do you not know who these companies are? How do you not know who Lifetime is? How do you not understand what's going on with Stark out in California? Like, what? There's just a lack of, you just stay in your little bubble, in your four walls. And it's one of the reasons that I think a lot of owners miss opportunities, and they are not as cosmopolitan as a business owner as they could be, because they don't even consume the news within their own industry. They have 6 fantasy football teams, but they don't have a fucking clue what's going on within the fitness industry, and they wonder why they suck at owning a fitness business. Anyway, whatever. Let's get into it. Bloomberg article, how the biggest boutique fitness company turned suburban moms into bankrupt franchisees. It's a fucking zinger of a headline. Exponential's brands Pure Barre, Cycle Bar, Club Pilates, Row House, Rumble Boxing all have fanatical followings and some very alarmed business partners. That's the headline. This is on YouTube right now if you want the visual with it. I'm literally screen sharing the entire article. So here we go. This was written by the brilliant Natalie Wong over at Bloomberg. I think she did a killer job with this. Here we go. Cycle Bar is like Soul Cycle if you were to strip out the grapefruit scented candles, Instagram celebrity trainers, and culty vibe. A small army of spandexed 30 and 40 somethings can typically be found spinning and sweating to the thump of Britney Spears or 2000s hip hop playlists in a studio that feels more like a nightclub. Ripped, self-helpy instructors dish out tough love mantras while a leaderboard hovers above to inspire some and taunt the rest. The Cycle Bar aesthetic is so upscale bland, so tech bro chic, it's what you might imagine if Amazon were to birth a boutique spinning chain. Oh my God, it's so fucking good. I've skimmed this twice. I have not read it word for word, so some of this I'll be reading for the first time in that last line there. The Cycle Bar aesthetic is so upscale bland, so tech bro chic, it's what you might imagine if Amazon were to birth a boutique spinning chain. God damn, that's a bar. All right. Natalie Wong. She doesn't fuck around. Chances are, a fan of the Cycle Bar experience will probably also like Pure Barre, where women tuck and pulse their way to toned fulfillment. For Pilates types, there's Club Pilates, outfitted with rows of torture chamber-looking reformer equipment, whereas those craving a cardio burst can hit up the treadmill-based interval training of Stride, or join the crew at Row House. A dance workout at AKT promises a Shakira-esque physique created by the pop star's celebrity trainer, Anna Kaiser. For pent-up aggression, there's Rumble Boxing, a nightclub-style gym that Justin Bieber has frequented, while traditionalists can burn away that fat at Body Fit Training. Finally, to unclench those knotty muscles, you can downward dog at Yoga 6 or get massaged by a flexologist at Stretch Lab. So the author is obviously encapsulating all the brands of Exponential, which, if you're unaware, Exponential is the largest holdings company of boutique fitness franchises in the world. They have 10 brands under the name. They actually just added an 11th recently, a weight loss clinic. But out of the boutique fitness, they have 10. And Natalie Wong here is kind of just giving you an idea as to what these are right now. There are about 3,000 of these fitness studios, sometimes several in the same suburban strip mall. And it's no coincidence that they seem like different versions of the same thing. In 2015, California entrepreneur Anthony Geisler began acquiring these small studio chains. Between the time Equinox acquired SoulCycle in 2011 and Peloton fell back to earth in 2022, Geisler quietly built the world's biggest boutique workout empire, Exponential Fitness, Inc. To get there, he employed a growth model more typical of McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. Instead of owning all the studios, Exponential franchises them, selling investors rights to the brand along with a business plan and the promise of corporate support. 3 years after Geisler sold his first fitness franchise business, LA Boxing, he saw potential in a small California chain, Club Pilates. He bought it for roughly $2 million and about 2 years later sold a majority stake to private equity heavyweight TPG at a valuation of $100 million. TPG and Geisler decided to form Exponential, offering budding mini moguls, some of them suburban, middle-class Pilates moms, and creatine popping dads, who began as customers, the chance to own a Club Pilates. Soon they could own a cycle bar or Yoga 6 too. The things we hear from our franchisees all the time is, I'm sick of making money for the man. I want to make money for myself. I want a second lease on life, said Geisler in an interview with Bloomberg Businessweek in November at the company's headquarters in Irvine, California. At the time Exponential surfaced, it seemed as if there was no limit to the long table of bougie fitness. There weren't the big box gyms of yore. Instead, the studios promised something more religious, along with the green juices and intermittent fasting breaks, a way to work your core or biceps that offered both a badge of honor and a way of life. To expand Exponential's franchise business, Geisler targeted what he calls corporate refugees, people who are tired of working the traditional 9 to 5 or wanted to invest their 401k savings in something more lucrative. Persuading the studio's diehards to put their nest egg into opening a franchise wasn't particularly hard. And I want to make some commentary there. That part is so true. And in the independent mom and pop shop as well. How many of the CrossFit gym owners started as a customer at a CrossFit gym or maybe even a trainer? It's so crazy. Most of these studio owners through Exponential are mom and pop. There's one here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Rumble, which is an Exponential brand. And I'm almost positive the franchisees are a husband and wife couple that work at BOA, Bank of America, right? Probably like upper management, good job, good paying job. But these aren't overly rich people. These are generally 1 and 2 units at a time, small, not crazy wealthy 1%ers. I think a lot of times the independent small business gym owner thinks of a franchisee as this crazy multi-millionaire. And there are scenarios. You will see co-ops where 2 or 3 or 4 people go in on an Orange Theory. And they each throw in $150,000. And you'll see things like that. But, even with my experience and the work with Metabolic, it exposed me. I mean, the guys in Nashville, they were just 2 drinking buddies, roommates, in Charlotte, North Carolina that went to Mad. And they were a Metabolic Charlotte customer and they hated their jobs, just like Geisler was saying. They got tired of working the 9 to 5, making money for the man. And so they went to Metabolic corporate, said, we want to open up one of these. They were diehard fans and they were fanatics of the brand, and they moved to Nashville, Tennessee and opened it up. These guys were multimillionaires looking to just, diversify their portfolio. And that's the majority of what you're going to find out in the rest of this story that Exponential built this 3,000 unit empire on. It was on the backs of people who just loved the brand, thinking we're going to get into bed with a really good company and open this franchise, and they're going to help us ensure we're successful. and it doesn't have as happy of an ending as you would think. Spoiler alert, doesn't work out well for a lot of them. I really love the idea of, persuading the studio's diehards to put their nest eggs into opening a franchise wasn't particularly hard. I really love the idea of bringing a big city experience to the suburbs, says Lisa, a cycle bar owner in Texas. I was really drawn to the inclusive fitness. Samantha, who often went with friends to her local cycle bar, fell hard for the company's pitch. For a few $100,000, she'd collect checks amounting to about $400,000 a year just by following the corporate playbook. But even as the pitch proved compelling to more and more Exponential customers, many found themselves trapped in a financial nightmare. On Samantha's due diligence calls with the Exponential team, she says she was reassured that the business practically ran on autopilot and that she could keep her corporate day job. But in 2022, soon after buying the franchise, she attended Exponential's annual franchise conference in Las Vegas and learned many of her peers were bleeding money, just as she was. This was my first big shock, Samantha says. I realized I had been misled. That is fucking criminal. And now, granted, there's a level of anyone here considering opening a franchise, I don't care if it's metabolic, industrious, Pure Bar, fucking OTF, I don't care what, any brand of any scale, fucking McDonald's, you don't do your own due diligence and go and be like, hey, I'm going to go drop in on 15 random franchisees, ask to have coffee with them and ask them what's up. You sign and hand over several $100,000 to Exponential without any fucking due diligence on your own. I don't think what Exponential did was great. But these franchises are not magical unicorns. They don't just print money. They're fucking businesses that you have to work at. Franchises just accelerate the rate of success because they did all the fucking grunt work, non-profitable, early stage startup bullshit for you. And now you can just get straight to the making money part. Whereas when you start a brand, you have to do the years of infancy stage growth and figure it the fuck out part. But it's still I think Exponential is pretty shitty for what they've done and misleading people. But it is absolute bullshit for anyone to take no responsibility for doing their own due diligence when making a financial investment like that. It's just common fucking sense. Franchises are notoriously risky. Although the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, requires franchisors to disclose key facts about the business to prospective franchisees, that's what we call FDD documents, franchise disclosure documents, such agreements tend to favor the franchisor, who usually sets the terms. The legal agreements are often broad, leaving room for disagreement about things such as fees and control over business decisions. Still, many aspiring entrepreneurs are willing to try because buying a franchise means you're more or less flipping a switch on an established brand with a winning formula and systems in place. With Exponential, though, it became clear to many that the business model the company was selling didn't actually work. More than 30 former and existing franchisees, not including some who are or were in active litigation with the company, spoke to Businessweek on the condition of anonymity because they feared legal retribution. They say Exponential deliberately misled them and their peers about the strength of the individual franchises prior to signing the agreement. Many of the franchisees, like Lisa, Samantha, and others, using first names here, are identified with pseudonyms to protect their identity. While they say that COVID-19 played a big role in the struggles across the fitness industry, some signed the agreement post-pandemic and claimed the company inflated revenue and profit projections based on unrealistic membership numbers and grossly underestimated costs. They also say it promised them the ability to run their business as investors rather than hands-on managers. They oversold the success of other franchises and was deceptive about the level of corporate support it would provide. Exponential, in a statement to Businessweek, rejects these assertions, explaining that all prospective owners, by law, are given franchise disclosure documents with financials to review that regulators have approved. Exponential leadership is trained with the understanding that they cannot, under any circumstances, share projections or other metrics not included, a company spokesperson said in a written statement. Some of the documents, however, explicitly say that no government agency has verified the information in them. Their model is very broken and they shouldn't be selling anyone on it, said Brent Zartler, a franchisee who sold 2 of his 3 cycle bar studios in Florida and is trying to sell the remaining one. He says Exponential often touted one of his studios to potential franchisees as having a record 500 members before it even opened. What they don't tell these franchisees is it's just been a slow, steady death with that studio, says Zartler, who's lost more than $500,000 on his business and is planning to file for bankruptcy. I've been working in gyms for 20 years and I've never worked in a business where there's been such a high attrition rate. And this is something I'll say, as a little sidebar this. This guy Zartler who, opened up like Cycle Bar. Again, I do put onus on some of these people to kind of, what would we call it? Conceptual, concept validate each one. Spin studios like Cycle Bar popped off after Soul Cycle. Everybody was chasing Soul Cycle, wanted to be the next Soul Cycle. And whenever you chase something that's that's a unicorn, Soul Cycle in our industry was a unicorn, right? Gold's Gym at the time of Venice Beach was a unicorn. Apple is a unicorn, Uber. Whenever you chase the unicorn and your goal is you want to be the next, I'm going to try to do it better, in my opinion, you've already fucked up. Has anyone done better than Apple? Has anyone done better than Soul Cycle in indoor cycling? No. They're a unicorn for a reason. And when brands see that, like an Exponential, oh man, Soul Cycle's popping, we're going to create our version and sell it to everyone, because Soul Cycle does not franchise, by the way, they're corporately owned. It just, as a common a thinking person, and I understand I have a slightly different ability and lens here than the average person, but why in the fuck would you think oh man, I'm going to own a Cycle Bar and we're going to do better than Soul Cycle? Are you high? It's you're going to do better than Michael Jordan? It's incredible, the audacity of these franchisors to come up with these models and then pitch them oh man, we've got all the good that Soul Cycle had with none of the bad. You're going to kill it. But still, I just cannot believe some of the, what would you call it? The naivete of some of these franchisees to think oh yeah, we're going to do, and Cycle Bar is one of, and I'm using Cycle Bar specifically because it was 100% designed to try to be better than Soul Cycle. It never stood a chance, and it is one of the worst performing brands in all of Exponential's portfolio. Some early franchisees, such as Keely Watson, said they received helpful guidance and support from the company. She's been with Club Pilates since before Exponential purchased it, and today has 27 studios with more currently in development. Our business is better than it has ever been, and we're growing rapidly, says Watson, who was provided as a source by the company. Interesting. They probably fucking paid her. Be like, bitch, you fucking say this shit or I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you and your family if you don't say this shit. Others say they're succeeding in spite of Exponential, not because of it. We're so confused by what they're doing that we stay out of the fray, says a franchisee who has a mix of profitable and unprofitable studios. It's just a botched up system. Now, if you have Exponential studios and some are profitable and others aren't, I don't know how much you can blame Exponential on that. It worked on some, and you're not, okay, well, those good, but these ones that aren't working, that's all Exponential's fault. I don't know. I mean, maybe Exponential gave them bad advice as to what markets to open up in. Maybe they, the equipment, they paired them with the wrong brand that had a really heavy equipment overlay and told them they had to grab a certain piece of real estate that was crazy expensive. Maybe there's some of that. I don't know. But I don't know. If you've got 6 locations, 3 are doing awesome, 3 are doing shitty, I don't know if you can actually blame Exponential completely. It just sounds like you're an average operator. So then there's a little graph here that shows Exponential's brands, number of open studios, and As of September 2023, there's 935 Club Pilates, 646 Pure Bars, 410 Stretch Labs. The Stretch Labs, from everything I have seen, read, know, that, my friends, is the killer right there. Those guys they are doing very well with their fucking stretchologist. And then it kind of goes through all the rest of these. All right, so many who have now found themselves enmeshed in that system say they wish they'd done their homework. That's funny. Geisler has a long history of subterfuge, according to lawsuits and interviews with former business partners, employees, and franchisees. While he projects a clean-shaven charisma and affable West Coast ease, he also has a track record of combative management, deploying growth-at-all-cost tactics, and unleashing aggressive reprisals. I'm, by the way, half retarded, so I can't read good, so just bear with me. Aggressive reprisals against anyone who gets in his way. In fact, early on, Geisler was so set on quickly scooping up more fitness brands that he ended his partnership with TPG, a company famous for pushing its investments to grow faster because he felt it was holding him back. TPG told me to essentially slow down, which then prompted me to buy them out, Geisler told an online publication in 2021. A spokesperson for TPG declined to comment. An Exponential spokesperson rejects the assertion that Geisler has a history of misleading people. Interesting. All right. Today, many of the company's franchisees, some of them once the brand's biggest enthusiasts, have either declared bankruptcy or lost their retirement savings. Others have suffered nervous breakdowns or are under psychiatric care, attributing partial blame to Exponential. I don't know. You're fucking in the loony bin. There was some shit going on before you signed on with fucking, Row House. I don't think it's Row House's fucking problem that you're a nut job. But, hey, listen, that's also another thing, though. Exponential obviously isn't vetting their franchisees that well. If we have fucking, people going under psychiatric care. Someone's going to call me out for something very insensitive. I'm sure there's a real good reason why somebody would go under psychiatric care in stressful situations like losing your house in retirement. I get that. I get it. I'm not insensitive to it. But still, it's kind of extreme. Wall Street is starting to sense some cracks in the company, which went public in 2021. In June, a short seller report alleged that Exponential was an abusive franchise and a quote-unquote house of cards. In August, AKT franchisees sued Exponential and Geisler, and recently more than 100 franchisees signed on to a potential class action lawsuit against Exponential. Our investigation reveals systemic, substantial fraud in their model, says David Bovino, founding attorney at Bovino and Associates. Meanwhile, even as the company announced another major acquisition in December of the weight loss chain Lindora, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is starting to investigate claims against the company, says a person who asked not to be named, citing private matters. A spokesperson for the SEC declined the comment. Exponential said the company is unaware of any investigation and hasn't been contacted by the SEC regarding one. It reminds me like that scene from Wolf of Wall Street. He's like, Dad, yeah, no, we're not getting investigated. No, not at all. Like while they're bugging and wiring and sending fucking undercover agents into your place. Of course not. They're going to tell you that they're fucking investigating you. They're going to investigate the fuck out of you first. And then come in with their fucking, with 30 dudes in trench coats and fucking, SEC jackets and fucking confiscate every computer in there. And you're fucked. It's not your average entrepreneurs starting a business and failing, which is normal, says Kyle, a former Exponential franchisee who lost $1 million on his Cycle Bar studio. This franchise is really sophisticated with their messaging and really good at getting new blood and sucking them dry. Damn. This is Geisler. This dude has a worse receding hairline than I do. Mine's not great, but this dude's is fucking, his hair is running away from his fucking eyes. Look at that suit. Yeah. God. Some people, you just look at their face and you're just like, I just fucking hate your face. I don't know. There's just something about you and I just hate your fucking face. And I'm sure people have that with me, but I fucking hate his face. By the time Geisler finished high school, he'd worked at McDonald's and a pet store, flipped vintage Levi jeans, DJ'd. Well, that fucking explains it. DJ'd? Fucking DJs. And he cleaned cars for rich people at a Ritz-Carlton. After he graduated from the University of Southern California in 1999, a friend asked him to help run an Interactive Solutions Corp, a casino gaming software company, even though Geisler had no experience with software. He soon became CEO, but the company blew up around the time of the dot-com crash. Before Geisler's brief tenure ended, he appeared in a documentary by ABC Australia. It was investigating the origins of a scam in which illegal high-pressure stockbrokering, phone operations in Bangkok were pitching risky stocks to unsuspecting retail investors, including shares of Interactive. Why were shares in your company being sold through Bangkok boiler rooms? A journalist asks a fresh-faced Geisler, who quickly shuts down the interview. Are these questions going to keep going down this way, he asks? Because I'm going to get real busy if they do. Exponential says Geisler wasn't aware of any scam and was cleared of wrongdoing after authorities questioned him. Yeah, that's exactly like Wolf of Wall Street. The same year as that interview, Geisler discovered another industry. He tried a class at LA Boxing, a small gritty gym in Costa Mesa, California, that catered mostly to men. At the time, big gym chains dominated, and he saw a chance to recast the brand to suburban moms in wealthier zip codes. He approached LA Boxing's owners, bought the rights to its IP, and slowly opened more locations. A franchise broker suggested he convert the business, which he did in 2004, and over the next decade, he sold 200 licenses for LA Boxing franchises before selling the company to Ultimate Fighting Championship gyms, UFC gyms, for about $25 million. Geisler has said he lives by the words of the most famous fictional boxer, Rocky Balboa. It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. He appears to have applied that philosophy both professionally and personally. In 2004, a furniture store allegedly owed him money for not delivering the full bedroom set he ordered. So he sued the shop, then hired 4 people to picket it, getting local news coverage. 5 years later, when he was still president of LA Boxing, he made headlines by challenging singer Chris Brown to a fist fight for assaulting Rihanna. Geisler started a Facebook group called I Want to Fight Chris Brown. That's fucking awesome. That's funny. I don't care who you are. That shit's fucking funny. For assaulting Rihanna. All right, so he starts his Facebook group, a publicity stunt, he said at the time, to shed light on domestic violence. 4 years later, a court server filed a lawsuit against Geisler for drawing a gun and threatening to kill him when he arrived at the property to serve Geisler legal notices related to a dispute with the owner of the condo he was renting. The case was dismissed. Exponential said the charge against him was dropped. Geisler is a fucking tool. I want to fight Chris Brown. 6 months after stepping down as president of LA Boxing in 2014, Geisler got a call from a small Newport Beach family office about a deal for another up-and-coming franchise, Club Pilates. He bought it the next year and hired his LA Boxing team to roll out the chain nationally, switching from a pay-by-class system to a monthly membership fee and swapping out mint and pink for blue and black to appeal to male clients too. Within 2 years, Geisler went from selling 70 licenses to more than 500. He sold a 70% stake in Club Pilates to TPG, then reinvested his proceeds from that sale into starting Exponential with the private equity firm. The parent company, which he'd owned 30% of, would run Club Pilates and the other brands it would acquire. Shortly after, TPG partner Mark Grabowski left the firm to create his own company, Snapdragon Capital Partners. And in 2018, he and Geisler bought out TPG's Exponential stake. Exponential's early days. Are you guys enjoying like story time with Stu here? You'll get all cozied up in bed and was reading a little nighttime story to all my little gym owners here. Well, I'm drinking a Christmas cookie winter ale. Delicious. Kind of gay, but delicious. Exponential's early days were filled with chaos and excitement. Before its corporate team was even fully staffed and trained, Exponential purchased its next brand, CycleBar, At franchise orientations in Orange County in late 2017, owners were going through onboarding at the same time as new staffers. Let's see, I got to reassess it. Okay. I need to move my little picture guy around. There we go. It was like the blind leading the blind, says one former franchisee who went through orientation at the time. Geisler moved employees from a tiny warehouse in Costa Mesa to a larger office in Irvine where they worked on the first floor while the rest of the building was being finished. He and other executives drove Teslas and Maseratis to the office, while some workers struggled with low pay. I was just under the poverty line for where we worked and lived, says former Exponential senior level employee, who asked not to be named because they feared legal recourse from the company. Exponential says it has always compensated team members at or above the industry standard. Dude, listen, if you challenge Chris Brown to a fucking fight, you get to fucking drive Teslas and Maseratis. If you don't challenge Chris Brown and make Facebook pages about and groups about him, you have to fucking take the bus, motherfucker, all right? You want to make it in this world, fucking challenge rappers to fights publicly. Do that. By 2019, Exponential had acquired 6 more brands. Geisler and his partners discovered a 3-location rowing chain started by a couple fitness junkies in New York, Row House. By the way, I've been to the original Row House before they acquired it. It was cool. It was spinning on Concept 2 rowers. Like, again, when you think about this, like a company this big, Exponential, and they're looking around, and they're like, all right, well, what are we going to do? We'll do spinning, but on rowers. And if you know Stride is their indoor treadmill class. It's like, we're going to do spinning, but on treadmills. Like that girl, like Natalie Wong, the author of this, said earlier, it was all the same shit, just like a different shade of shit. There was a dance cardio workout studio hatched by a celebrity trainer whose clients included Alicia Keys and Sarah Jessica Parker. 3 stretching diehards, a lawyer, a Marine turned personal, and that's the AKT brand, the one that had Alicia Keys and Sarah Jessica Parker, that was AKT, one of their other brands. 3 stretching diehards, a lawyer, a Marine turned personal trainer, and a physical therapist created a one-on-one stretching service in Venice, California called Stretch Lab. Exponential bought them all out, planning to copy and paste the franchise model. The template that we used at Club Pilates has become a toolbox to solve problems in other brands. Geisler said in a 2019 interview with Franchise Ramp, an Exponential marketing partner. Fast Company ranked Exponential among its annual list of the world's most innovative companies, and Goldman Sachs named Geisler one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. Exponential soon signed deals to expand to Germany, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and beyond. To woo prospective franchisees, Exponential would fly them out to Irvine, drive them around in luxurious Sprinter vans, and indulge them with tomahawk cut steaks, fancy French wines, and expensive tequilas. It would sometimes encourage potential owners to take out small business loans to fund the cost of the purchase or roll over their 401k. It even offered some direct loans. You weren't supposed to handle any complex topics. You had to keep it light and free and sell the fantasy, says the former senior level employee. Exponential also hosted a flashy annual conference, usually in Miami or Vegas, featuring guest speakers such as Magic Johnson and Tony Hawk, and performers like Snoop Dogg, Coolio, and Vanilla Ice. Apparently, he could not get Chris Brown to attend those, apparently. Guests were treated to a duet of Ice Ice Baby featuring Geisler. Oh my God, that's got to be on the internet. Who would dress up as Iron Man or a Top Gun fighter. I'm not going to do it now because this is a long fucking article, but I will be searching for the video of Geisler doing Ice Ice Baby. Oh, what a tool. By mid-2020, Exponential had opened more than 1,500 studios and was planning on going public. Then COVID shuttered thousands of gyms around the world, leaving other fitness companies, including 24 Hour Fitness and Gold's Gym, to file for bankruptcy. The pandemic took a major toll on Exponential's businesses too, with more than 1,000 locations temporarily closing, and the IPO was put on ice, which was unacceptable. One thing I've learned from Anthony is that he doesn't take no for an answer, says Sarah Luna, Exponential's president. Even with struggling franchisees dealing with new COVID variants, Exponential continued to sell licenses. Why don't they just say continue to sell franchises? It's getting everybody confused. Exponential is a franchise. It's not a license model. I know I've been having a lot of conversation on license models like CrossFit and Calvin Klein and Board 30 and OPEX, but this is a franchise. She just keeps using the word license interchangeably. Between March 2020 and the summer of 2021, it opened about 400 locations and acquired, which by the way, dude, for those of you guys not in the know, to open 400 locations in a year is insane. It's one thing, it's why I really like brands like Industrious and Metabolic. They could open faster if they wanted, and they purposely choose to go slower, right? Like this is how F45 got in trouble. For anyone who's been paying attention to the F45 fiasco, lying about how much the studios were making, letting people open up on top of each other with no geographical protection just to sell franchises. I hate that. I fucking hate that. Ugh. In 2021, it opened 400 locations and acquired boxing brand Rumble. Finally, on July 23rd, 2021, Exponential had its coming out on the New York Stock Exchange. Geisler told a trade publication at the time, I really want to build this business and build a legacy and build a massive company. In 2021, a few months before Exponential went public, Vincent, a longtime yoga fanatic and an executive at a consulting firm, was looking for an investment to go in on with his business partner. He was intrigued by Yoga 6, whose studios had become distressed during the pandemic. Exponential told the partners those studios would become profitable within 3 months. Plus, it would waive Vincent's franchisee fee for future studios and potentially give him and his partner some stock. He said Geisler clarified that he couldn't include it in the contract because of the quiet period ahead of the pending IPO. Anthony was talking about promises he couldn't put in the writing, Vincent says. He was convincing. He's a charming guy. Vincent and his partner, who reviewed many P&L's statements over their careers, examined the one for Yoga 6, which showed a healthy business apart from the pandemic blip. But after a year and a half, the partners got out. It wasn't even close to reality, Vincent said of the financials the company presented. Once we got in, the losses were much greater than what they showed on the spreadsheets, probably by 50%. Vincent and others Businessweek spoke to say that Exponential had a habit of obscuring what it cost to keep a studio running and how much it was actually bringing in. For example, Exponential told potential Cycle Bar franchisees that the build-out, real estate, leases, equipment, and merchandise costs $400,000 to $500,000 on average. But many owners in the suburbs, where everything from rent to construction generally costs less than in major cities, found themselves paying hundreds of thousands more. When it came to money coming in, Exponential touted strong membership revenue numbers, but that didn't account for intense churn rates and discounted fees, some franchisees say. Classes often looked packed and even had waiting lists, but many members were paying lower rates from promotions. So for a lot of us in here, we know this, right? They pitch you on, oh yeah, it's only going to cost you $400,000 to get started. This is like when with the gym real estate company, I'll have someone be like, oh man, and this is not a franchise, but it'll be a mom and pop, and they're like, oh yeah, I talked to my girlfriend's dad, who's a contractor. He says it's only going to cost me $200,000. I'm like, your girlfriend's dad's fucking retarded, or he's high or something. No. This is always assume it's going to cost more than it says. Even this is another thing I don't blame on Exponential. If they lied about the numbers, that's one thing, but everybody knows, at least I thought everybody knew. When you are constructing a house, a car, a fucking, a commercial build out, if they say it's going to cost $100, count on it costing $130. Factor in an additional 30% and at least a 30% longer timeline. I don't know. I just thought that was just common knowledge. So again, I think it's shitty of Exponential to not be up in front about all that? Yes. But still, I just expect some people to be a little bit more cynical and just and not believe everything everybody fucking says. People, and these are people, a lot of them that were customers of the brands and liked it. Those people I don't get, because they probably got to know the coaches and the GMs, and they were there so often. They know how hard those people work. They saw how many new members came in and came out. Like, if you were blind and you just had a bunch of money and you saw an Exponential ad and you went out to Irvine and Geisler and his fucking team blew you in a Sprinter van while they drove you around eating fucking, Nobu sushi and drinking fine Chardonnays, and you just got, captivated by the charming and you didn't even look into it. You've never been in the fitness industry. Shame on you. That's your fault. Even with these guys being pieces of shit, it's your fault. Franchisees were told they would get corporate support, but many that Businessweek spoke with say that once they signed on, the level of support diminished. If panicked new business owners finally got someone to pick up the phone, the answer to their struggles was often that they needed to pour more money into the franchise, or that they had to buy multiple studios to see real returns. Geisler and his team often claimed, both to prospective owners and in media interviews, that Exponential never had a single store closure, an indicator of the business's health. Before I read any more, you hear this in the CrossFit scene, you're like, oh, we have never closed that. No. It's because you sell it to the next silly fuckface who's dumb enough to buy it. That's like, I had Craig Patterson on the podcast, and he talked to the guys who do the insurance, a lot of the insurance, like Vaughn Vernon and those guys who do a lot of the insurances for CrossFit affiliates. And his number was 100,000 since the beginning have exchanged hands in total. Do you know how many times those gyms have to be sold and then sold again and then sold again? And you're just selling it to the next fucker who thinks they could fix it, but they're just green, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and think they're going to change the world with the gym. But yeah, we're like, oh, we've never had a closure. Yeah, because you fucking sell it to someone else for like $1. That's why you don't have to report any closures on your books. Although it's normal for a small percentage of franchise owners to fail, high turnover rates and store closings can spook potential franchisees. Prior to getting involved, I tried doing my own due diligence and research on whether any studios have gone under, says Sydney, a former cycle bar owner, who closed her studio in 2021 and filed for bankruptcy after almost losing her house. I couldn't find any evidence. Sydney, did you you didn't go to Google, do a Google domestic, like United States search for cycle bar, make an Excel sheet with every location, phone number, and did you call everyone? Well, I want to know what Sydney did that she couldn't get one shred of gossip or insight from any other cycle bar owner, the hundreds and hundreds that were out there, to give her a shred of, yeah, actually shit's not that great. I just don't believe in today's age with the internet that you weren't able to find a Reddit fucking thread where people are going off about how they invested this money in the franchise and the franchisor lied to them and they're going broke and they're fucking, the bank's going to repo the braces off their kid's stupid fucking face. Like, how are you, Sydney, not, I just don't, again, I refuse to accept the lack of due diligence on their part. I couldn't find any evidence. I want to know what Sydney did. I feel bad for Sydney. I do. But I want to know what the fuck this chick did because I believe that to be complete bullshit. That's because the company has gone to great lengths to make sure store closures don't happen. Exponential says it did this mostly by taking over struggling studios, but many owners who were bleeding cash say they couldn't close or get Exponential to take them over. Even if a franchisee is barely hanging on, Exponential has an incentive to not bail out the franchisee because they're still required to pay the franchisor a monthly fee. Plus, says Mary Jo Kraniker, a professor of accounting at York College, City Universities of New York, who reviewed Cycle Bar's financial statements, a growing rate of store closures on a balance sheet can set off a dangerous cycle. Failure to attract new franchisees would likely exacerbate. It's like masturbate, but exacerbate any financial problems that the franchisor might be experiencing. Kranicher wrote in an email, a surge of store closures can also raise concerns for shareholders about whether a company is financially able to meet its obligations, she said. Geisler said that if a franchisee wants to exit their business, the most they'll have to pay Exponential is for liquidated damages somewhere in the ballpark of $20,000. Very, very rarely do we ever even collect a fee for a mutual termination agreement, he says. But 9 franchisees, not including some in existing litigation, say that when they wanted to exit and couldn't find a buyer, Exponential threatened litigation due to breach of franchise agreement or told the owners they'd have to pay a huge exit fee as much as $115,000 in some cases to get out of their agreement and have Exponential take over their studios. For some of the luckier owners, the only way to get out of the business was to turn over the entire enterprise, the studio equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars, for just $100 or less. Exponential would either take over the studio or sell it to another franchisee. It's been so traumatizing, says Sophie, who opened a cycle bar and has lost more than $1 million running it. She says stress from her failing studio, compounded by COVID-related health issues, led to depression, anxiety, and hospitalization. She gave several doctors letters to Exponential management recommending she not work. But over the course of months, she says she barely received any help. Lady, you own a business. You cannot go to the doctor's office and get a fucking note that says, I have the sniffles and I can't work today. Okay, I don't feel bad for this lady. Like, this is, I am not pro Exponential, but I do believe we have a bunch of whiny ass, some, not all, not some, not many, not all of them, some whiny ass titty babies in our ranks, where okay, COVID-related health issues, that's serious, I get it, but you're gonna have them write a note to your franchisor saying, hey, I can't work today, can you send someone down to my cycle bar to run it? Here's the thing is, franchisees are not true entrepreneurs, right? They're entrepreneurial, right? If true entrepreneur would go ahead and build the systems, they would build the plane as they flew it. Franchisees, who I believe are also smarter, I think for most of us, you're actually way better going with a blueprint, are not real entrepreneurs. And they don't, like, a lot of them still have this like W-2 employee mentality where they want to bitch about, yeah, well, like, I'm not feeling good. I got the sniffles over here. I think I got the COVID, and yeah, can someone help out? Like, dude, you own a business. You sign loans and shit with personal guarantees. Fucking put your mask on, take some Dayquil, and let's fucking go. Jesus Christ. Let's see. I did not receive any help. I was put on full disability, and they still would not release me from my franchise agreement. You're on disability. That's not a forever. Is that a death sentence? Like, do you not have staff? It'd be like if an owner got hit by a car and was in the hospital for 5 weeks. Like, do you not have staff that, to run the show? Now, again, if you're not profitable and there's no money, I understand, but would it be nice to have a franchise? I love that. I'm going to ask Brandon Cullen this when the co-founder of Metabolic, what would they do in that situation? Is there anything they would do? Would the franchisor financially, and again, maybe they would. Maybe the franchisor should or could inject reserves. Maybe franchisors should have cash reserves as lifeboats in crazy scenarios, like in this scenario where fucking Sophie is hospitalized and has to get a note from her doctor, because her tum-tum hurts. So Sophie ends up closing her studio this year without Exponential's consent. She's unsure if they'll come after her. I really hope Sophie is not a fan of my content. It has cost them $0 for me to open my studio, and they've made money off me, but I've lost everything. Emily, a former data analyst, and her husband are also trying to get out of their contract. After they became Cycle Bar regulars, Exponential told them in 2021 the cost to open their own studio would be between $400,000 and $500,000, and even gave them a loan. But it ended up costing the couple more than $700,000 to open the studio. And within a month, membership plummeted. So again, 400, they told them between 400 and 500. Okay, that's what we're averaging. You guys know how averages work. That means a percentage at the bottom, let's say 20% at the bottom, is less than 400 to 500,000. A percentage at the top is more than 400 to 500,000. And then in the middle is the average, between 400 and 500,000. So let's cut the difference between 400 and 500,000 and call it 450. And then, I'm not great at mathematics, but they end up doing 700, right? Minus the 450, that's a delta of $250,000. Okay? So that delta compared to what they told them it was going to be was a swing of 55%. Is that heavy? It fucking sure as hell is. I was talking about 30% earlier, but still, like, what I'd love to see for franchisors is to show, like, here is our average, here's where it's gone to. Yes, we have had some studios that have had to spend $772,000 to open, and we've had some that have gone away with a $310,000 opening. I don't know where you're going to fall, right? Like, there are so many things in commercial real estate when you get into a site and you sign the lease, and then you find out that the plumbing, the pipes aren't big enough, so you got to gut it and rip up the concrete and redo that, and your electrical panel needs to be upgraded, and the utilities company is going to charge you 40 grand for that. Like, there's so many things that pop up that it's not Exponential's fault, but they probably could have provided better data sets. But still, at the end of the day, boys and girls, you're a big kid and you have to make your own decisions and fucking live with them. You signed a contract. That was the best part of the first sentence. Emily, a former data analyst, and her husband are also trying to get out of their contract. It's a contract. Your mortgage is a contract, right? Like, you probably have an employee contract. Like, they're contracts. You have to take it very seriously when you sign them, and you assess the risk. If the risk is worth it, you go for it. But when the risk kicks you in the dick, you don't act freaked out and get pissed off. Now, if there's fraud, if they're lying about the numbers, if they coerce you into something, that's different. But I don't want this article to be read and people to download it and read this and completely negate the responsibility that these grown-ass adults had to making a business decision and signing these agreements and not asking the right questions or doing the fair amount of due diligence they should have. It turned out this was a chronic problem for franchisees in which revenue derived from memberships was often far below what the company carpet bombing promos was far below what Exponential projected. I'm fucking retarded. Problems were compounded by the company carpet bombing promos for studios rather than helping them grow a sustainable membership base. Problems were compounded by the company carpet bombing promos. Got it. So just running fucking discount over discount, founding membership. I get it. Yeah, that's bad for business. You can't, doing founding, doing initial pre-sales at a discount, that's okay. But then to keep going back to that play over and over and over again, you're going to be in deep shit. Let's see. Earlier this year, when she told an Exponential executive her studio couldn't get traffic up and might have to shut down, he threatened her. He said, "You have children in the room, so I'm not going to go into all the details, but the punchline is, you'll be fucked if you close." That's what Emily says that an Exponential executive told her. You'll be fucked if you close. Now, in all fairness, he is right. Like, if you close the business, you are fucked. You're going to lose a ton of money. You probably have a personal guarantee on the lease. Like, he's not wrong. Could he have a little bit better bedside manner? Probably. Be a little bit less of a dickhead? Definitely. But he's not wrong. A few months later, and here's the thing, it's not like he threatened her. He didn't say, like, if I'm not going to go into all the details, but the punchline is this: if you close, you'll be fucked. Like, he wasn't threatening her. Like, he was saying, like, you're going to be fucked if you close, as I'm assuming. I'm assuming he wasn't threatening to fuck her if she closed. But I don't know. I wasn't there. So, I don't know. It could go either way. A few months later, the couple emailed corporate explaining they couldn't make payroll and would have to close their studio. After months of ignoring their calls, Exponential's corporate team quickly responded by informing them they were in default and potentially subject to major liabilities. Today, the couple is more than $1 million in debt and narrowly avoided foreclosure on their home by filing for bankruptcy this fall. It has cost them $0 for me to open my studio, and they've made money off me, but I've lost everything, says Emily, who's now under the care of a psychiatric facility, which she says is largely because of the stress the business has caused. It's cheaper for them to strong-arm me into gifting them my studio, sign everything over, and then they turn around and sell it again to somebody else and let them go through the same thing. They've done it so many times. It is sad. This stuff makes me very pissed and sad because I love gym owners. I think there's a really good Netflix documentary in here somewhere. In 2020, a lawsuit hit Exponential celebrity brand AKT Anna Geisler, the creator of the Anna Geisler technique, for which her chain was named, sued Exponential while she was 9 months pregnant. She was probably just hormonal, that's all. The former dancer and choreographer alleged that Exponential, her business partner, failed to make payments it owed her as part of its 2018 purchase of her company. She said Geisler also froze her out of management decisions and disparaged her, Stuart, you're a fucking idiot, disparaged her on Zoom calls with other franchise owners. Exponential countersued, claiming among its allegations that Geisler violated her non-compete clause and parts of her franchise agreement. Geisler lamented the future of her brand in a 2020 New York Times article. I believed in this model. I wanted to empower women to have them be not just managers of studios, but owners, she said. I was never given that chance, and as an entrepreneur and business owner, my heart goes out to them. The lawsuit was settled in 2022. Geisler, who now runs 3 studios under the brand Anna Geisler Studios, didn't respond to requests for comment. Franchisees say they're terrified to speak out against Geisler. He'll tell you what you want to hear at the beginning, but when push comes to shove, he's real quick to be the 800-pound gorilla. If you guys didn't get a chance to see this guy, he's about as metro as it gets. This dude's not he's not the 800-pound gorilla. He's like one of those dudes, nice suit, flashy smile, can talk to you real mean. He's like a salesman kind of guy, it looks like. I don't know him personally, never met the dude. But yeah, I feel like you got to think about your fitness franchisees. There'd been one huge jack dude. Like one just fucking behemoth fucking of a man that was a franchisee of theirs. That could have just, I would have loved to see that interaction because they make Geisler sound to be like this alpha male, fuck you, I'm a kick, like that kind of thing. I don't know, but I just had this feeling that he has just kind of this like fuckboy, bitch assness type like vibe if you were to meet him, just from the pictures they've got in this article. It's his way or the highway, says Gary Stinnett, a former Cycle Bar franchisee. Geisler says he personally monitors Facebook groups to provide support. He personally monitors Facebook groups to provide support. Ooh, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I have another. You're personally going to get into the Facebook groups as the CEO of Exponential and monitor for support? Shut the fuck up. God, that's so pathetic. But some franchisees say it's to track any sign of dissent. That's why he's in the Facebook group. He's looking for dissent. Studio owners who make negative comments on the franchisee group pages are kicked out or their comments are deleted. This is like any of you guys who have had Facebook groups for your gym and you have those crazy motherfuckers, your members that are in there, especially during election season, and the comments get wild and you have to start censoring people's fucking shit. Oh my God. I can't, this word is going to fuck. Non-disparagement agreements, disparagement. I'm not a smart man. These whatever agreements are often included in settlements or exit agreements and sometimes even added to minor agreements, such as ones offering franchisees marketing dollars. Some franchisees have been threatened with fines as high as $100,000 for criticizing the company. It's not libel, it's not slander, it's not saying something false, it's targeting you if you say something that doesn't make him, Geisler, look good, which is petty, says a person with knowledge of the matter. Which, by the way, I think that's kind of crazy when you can just quote somebody and quote says a person with knowledge of the matter. Again, I love this woman's article, but I feel like you got to do something a little bit more than just say, says a person who said this thing to me when no one else was around. This isn't even public stuff. It's within their own private groups where you think there's freedom to vent and talk about problems. Says Geisler of the lawsuits, it's just a part of doing business. One former franchisee of multiple Exponential brands tried to sue the company in 2021, but because of Exponential's arbitration policy, he had to enter into private mediation. He says the company had terminated his contract when he temporarily closed studios because his staff was still uncomfortable coming in, even though COVID restrictions had been lifted. He couldn't share specifics about the case with Businessweek, citing confidentiality agreement restrictions, but he said he could relay a threat Geisler made to him via the mediator over Zoom. I'm going to take a drink before I read this. I'm going to swallow because I'm afraid I'm going to spit up laughing. One more time. But he said he could relay a threat Geisler made to him via the mediator over Zoom. That his head... I can't... That his head would be cut off and mounted on a spike with a note saying, "This is what happens when you fuck with Anthony Geisler." Can you imagine this? The CEO in his fucking pinstripe suit in his little square on Zoom. He gets into an argument with one of his franchisees or an employee and says, I'm gonna cut your head off and mount it on a spike with a note saying, "This is what happens when you fuck with Anthony Geisler." Oh my God, this is so good. This has to be a Netflix documentary. Through a spokesperson, Geisler denies the allegations, as does Alex Weingarten, a partner at Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, who represented Exponential. Oh, so Geisler denies it, and his $500 an hour attorney also denies it. That's it's so funny. Businessweek spoke to current and former Exponential employees, board members, and business partners of Geisler, sent by the company, who dispute such characterizations while praising Geisler's leadership. "I've worked with Anthony for 8 years, and I've only seen him work with integrity," said Megan Moen, a former executive vice president for finance at Exponential. Geisler's partner, Grabowski, echoes similar sentiments. "I have worked with Anthony for a long time. I see how well he treats his people," Grabowski says, noting that during the pandemic, he was on calls every week with the franchisees. Well, yeah, he's on the calls with them, and he's in the Facebook groups. He's literally the best boss fucking ever. Early this year, as Exponential continued selling licenses, touting its growth, Geisler dumped more than $47.4 million worth of the company's shares. During that time, Exponential stock was on a tear, jumping almost 45% through April. But unknown to most investors, issues were looming. A company that had signed a master franchise deal to open 30 cycle bars in the UK was in the process of being liquidated. A Washington-based news outlet, the Capital Forum, started writing stories about franchisees struggling across Exponential, and a short seller named Fuzzy Panda Research was privately working on a report targeting the company. If you've never read the Fuzzy Panda research on this, it's even funnier than this. I don't know why I never have read that to you guys as a nighttime bedtime story, but maybe I will one day. Maybe I will. On June 27th, Fuzzy Panda released his report claiming that more than 50% of Exponential Studios were losing money and that the company was misrepresenting the number of failed studios to investors. The shares tumbled, and franchisees, many in shock, saw it as confirmation that the issues they faced were widespread. It was eye-opening and terrifying, because though I wanted Exponential to be exposed, it was also bad for us as owners. It's one of those double-edged swords, Samantha says. We have to tell people what's going on, but it could hurt the brand further. Exponential responded the next day, cautioning investors that the report contains inaccurate information. Geisler said he woke up at 6 a.m. to a flurry of texts and emails and immediately drove to the office, still in his sweatpants. He didn't even change his pants, guys. This guy is on calls with people every week during COVID. He's monitoring the Facebook groups for you and answering questions, and he didn't even change out of his sweatpants before coming into the office the day after the Fuzzy Panda research came out showing that he was a complete cunt. Whew. Boss of the year. But he mostly shrugged it off, as did the board and most company analysts who are still bullish about the company. Our numbers speak for themselves, he says. At the end of the day, you are going to believe audited financial statements from Deloitte and Touche, or are you going to believe Fuzzy Panda and his anonymous friends? Good point. I'm not going to lie. Good point. You got some random blogger on the internet versus financial firms. I get it. With Wall Street scrutiny mounting, Geisler bought roughly $1 million worth of shares in August, but as Exponential shares continued to drop in September, there came another blow. 6 former AKT franchisees who'd closed their studios filed the suit against Exponential, alleging that it repeatedly made false representations about studio members, revenue, and cost to open. Another franchisee joined that suit last month. One of the main selling points behind the franchise was Geisler herself, and from the start, Exponential promoted her as the face of the brand, touting her connections to celebrity clients and telling franchisees she was involved in leadership and strategy. Yet when Exponential started to franchise AKT's operations in 2018, the company was already in active disputes with her, a critical detail that was never disclosed to potential franchisees. When franchisees closed their studios, Exponential filed suit against most of them in arbitration, sending a warning shot to others who might hear about it. Plaintiffs bought into the Exponential facade and were financially annihilated by the reality behind the facade, the franchisee's suit said, adding that the owners had to close after spending $800,000 to more than $2 million as a direct result of the defendant's fraud. Of 30 AKT franchisees in 2018 and 2019, fewer than 10 remain, the lawsuit says. Let's see. With empty studio storefronts increasingly appearing in commercial strips across the country, row houses in Chicago and South Dakota, a Pure Bar in Portland, a Cycle Bar in West Des Moines, Exponential announced to investors in August that it would no longer take over the leases of distressed studios. Instead, it would focus on closing such locations or selling them to new owners. And I will say, I interviewed, if you guys saw the podcast in 2020 I did with a row house here in Charlotte, met with the franchisee. I should call her back and ask her about this. But I did a whole interview with her in her studio, and she ended up selling. It didn't go well for her. I should hit her up. Wonder if she's ever been told that she was going to have her head ripped off and put on a spike with a sign that says, if you fuck with Anthony Geisler, this is what happens. In fact, it had already found a buyer for dozens of them. Oh, this is the good part. This is the part that just went down a few weeks ago, and this is where it gets real good for anyone who's still with us. In fact, it had already found a buyer for dozens of them, spanning a bunch of its brands. MD Professional Holdings, LLC, owned by entrepreneur Mitch Brown, agreed to buy 65 studios last summer for less than $100. This dude, this is a true story. He bought 65 of these fucking franchisees for less than $100. According to someone with knowledge of the matter, Exponential sold them even though Brown didn't have the proper financing for the deal. And they did that so they could get them off their books. These crooked cunts. Since then, MD Professional has been unable to make basic payments for the studios, including rent, salaries, and maintenance costs, and staffers have fled. Exponential got the expense off its books, but the studios and Brown have descended into chaos. I accept, recognize, and will burden this debacle for the rest of my life, wrote Brown in an unhinged mass email to staff in November. According to the person familiar with the situation, Exponential handed off losing studios to somebody without making sure they had the financing and guaranteeing in place. They do have a responsibility as a franchisor. Brown didn't respond to requests for comment. Exponential said in a statement that it has attempted to assist Brown to remedy the situation and is currently covering payroll for the affected studios. Bullshit. Go into Reddit right now. Go into Reddit and search Exponential, MB or Mitch Brown. You will fucking go down a rabbit hole of these poor trainers, GMs, operators, managers that haven't been paid in months. And they all have had to quit. Now, I think there's always an opportunity there for someone to go start up their own shit, but good God, how shitty. By late fall, Geisler was emailing fitness instructors at Brown Studios, pitching them to take over their boss's franchise license. Meanwhile, as other franchisees caught on to the mess, one posted questions about it on the Facebook franchisees group page, stating he hoped Exponential wasn't trying to manipulate things to make its numbers look better. Geisler intervened with a response. I'm sure in the absence of answers, your mind tends to make them up, but please be careful not to be someone creating or spreading more lies. Or so I'll fucking rip her head off and stick it on a stick. God. I wonder if someone has that screenshotted or like a clip of that Zoom call. When a Yoga 6 owner chimed in to say he was new to the franchise and inquired if there would be a meeting about the issue, Geisler shot back, no, we've answered all the questions in the thread below. Can you not see the replies? I'm not going to lie. Facebook groups where people ask like a question that's already been answered 20 times is kind of annoying. Within days, Exponential's posted glowing third quarter results. Revenue grew 26 from the year before, and 127 new studios were opened that quarter. An additional 2,000 plus franchise licensees had yet to open locations. Geisler told shareholders chipperly, noting that they're all contractually obligated to. So there's more than 2,000 franchises that had yet to open. Now, meaning they're in development. This is how it works in the franchise world. Someone signs the franchisee fee, right? And then they have a period of time to get the lease signed, and then there's a period of time, for the upfit and all that. And sometimes, depending on the commercial real estate situation, it could take a long time. But to have fucking 2,000 not open, no good. No good. Let's see. Where's the rest of this? Read next. Updates 13 pair of new. Is this article done? It literally just stopped with that. Yeah, okay. I get that's it. Like I said, I literally skimmed this for a second or two. But yeah, this looks like it's it. Updates 13th paragraph with news. Okay, sorry guys. Well, that was the end of the story. Sorry, that was really anticlimactic there at the end. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed tonight's bedtime reading. And for those of you who maybe have been kind of like you just don't really know what's going on in the industry outside, I want you to understand as a small business owner, if you are one, franchising is not all rainbows and sunshine. I will say there are some great franchises out there. I really do stand by the metabolics. And I'm actually, Brandon Cullen and me will be having a conversation because he is very pro shedding light on the bad numbers and being transparent with it. I'm real excited to do that. I think I'm going to do that on his podcast. So keep your eye out for that if you don't follow his podcast. It's called Playing Guilty. Check it out. It's good. He does a really good job with it. But guys, thank you so much for tonight's Nighttime Stories with Stu. I hope you get to sleep well and you don't have any nightmares of anyone ripping your fucking head off and putting on a spike. But yeah, it's not all fucking rainbows and sunshines in the franchise world either, kids. Now, granted, again, great franchises out there. Unfortunately, this isn't one of them. Until I talk to you in the next podcast, have a great fucking day.